What's up? I'm Ben Camp, and this is
As Good As It Sounds.
Alright, let's look at the more technical aspects of how external and internal details interact and how to use them in a song. First, pause the video and see if you can tell which of these lines are E and which ones are I. Alright, now let's look at how Tove Lo laid out her external and internal lines. There's a few things to notice. First, the small scale balance. She's got a pretty good balance between E and I in any one section. Note she keeps switching it up, so she never goes more than 5 lines of any one type before she switches from internal to external or vice versa. Second thing to notice is the larger scale balance. So most of the external details in the verses and most of the internal details in the choruses. It's a pretty typical layout for verse-chorus. It doesn't always have to work that way, but you tell us the story in the verses and then you summarize the big emotions in the chorus. Third is, I want you to notice what Andrea Stolpe calls toggling, or the way that she's switching between E and I lines. More often than not, she's beginning her verses with external detail, painting the picture, and then ending them with internal detail, summarizing the emotion. It's also a pretty common pattern to see in a section, whether it's verse or chorus, that you end it with internal. We'll get into more detail on that in a moment, but for now, let's go back to balance. Why do we need balance? Well, if you have too much external detail, your listener's going to feel like you dropped them inside a cluttered room full of stuff with no idea what they're looking for. It's like you're reading a Proust novel where you're 30 pages in and he's still describing the damn nightstand. Too much internal detail and your listener's going to feel like they're overwhelmed with your feelings. They may feel lost and feel like the lyric is lacking like weight. It's like listening to a sort of good friend go on and on and on, and you're not quite sure why you should care. One of the keys to successful songwriting is finding the right balance of E and I. It's tricky, but possible, as you can see this elephant demonstrating here. Now, there are definitely exceptions to the balance guideline, like for film and TV. When you're writing for film and TV, the listener is already going to get tons of their external detail from the screen, all the stuff that they're seeing in the show, which is why music that gets sync placements tends to be much lighter on external details and much heavier on internal details. Okay, now, I gotta admit that I lied to you earlier. Remember when I said there are only 2 types of details? Well, in addition to E and I, there's also a third type, EI, the hybrid line. It can serve either purpose, E or I. It's kind of like an ace in blackjack. Depending on how you need it, you can count it as a 1 or an 11. Sometimes the hybrid happens because there's both an external component, race this Porsche down I-95, as well as an internal component, I'm tempted to. And sometimes the hybrid happens because it's a figurative line, and the line itself has more than one meaning. So you wear the pants is a perfect example. It has a literal external meaning about the jeans on the legs, but it also has an internal meaning about being in control. It's a metaphor where the person who wears the pants runs things. An EI hybrid line is a really handy ace to have up your sleeve when you're writing because it gives you the engaging sensory detail of an external line with the emotional weight of an internal line. So what do you need to be aware of when you're placing and balancing your E and I lines? Andrea Stolpe has an excellent chapter on EI toggling in popular lyric writing. Toggling is the order of E and I lines in a verse and what effect that ordering can have. Here's a few principles to keep in mind about the order of E and I lines. And remember, these are guidelines, not rules, so break them if it sounds better to. Show before you tell or tell before you show. If you give us the external detail first, if you show first, we get the senses activated by the bleach stains and the grease spots. And then, as Mark Simos puts it, we can humanize that detail by following external with internal. Or as Pat Pattison describes it, if you put the external first, it's like a bag of colorful dye that once you open it at the beginning of the song, it can drip down as the song goes on. But if you wait until the last line to open the bag of dye, you don't get to see any color until the end of the song, so all your internal details remain gray. If you put the internal first, then you find out lots of emotional stuff that, in the pants, for example, he's a rough and tumble stubborn guy who doesn't take any crap, and then you can later concretize that statement by showing us the pants that he wears. When you're editing your work, try placing E and I lines in different spots, move them around, and see what effect it creates. Impact. Switching from E to I is going to have an impact the same way that switching from a long line to a short line will, or from a lot of long notes to a bunch of very quick notes rushing by. Contrast makes a splash. It makes your listener perk up and go, hey, there's a change going on here. Balance. And again, balance within a section and between sections. Within a section, if you've just given us a bunch of external lines, try an internal one, or vice versa. Between sections, Often the verse will have more external details and the chorus will balance it out by having more internal details. And again, these are just guidelines. Whenever you're thinking about guidelines, stop thinking. If you're back and forth between an E and I line on the paper and you're not sure which one works, just sing both of them and pick the one that sounds the best. If it sounds good, it is good. Till next time, I'm Ben Camp, and this is
As good as it sounds.